Hello viewers and welcome back to day 4, or video 4 of Magic Core Set 2021. And I know I haven't been doing much of these for the last 2 days because there wasn't really much any cards to talk about the last couple of days. Like there wasn't many cards like on the 7th or. And before we get into the new set, the new lot of cards that have been released for on June the 9th, let's go through the cards that I didn't talk about the last time. So from June 6th, there was a. So I'm just doing the ones that I forgot on June 6th to today. And today's first card right away, we have got the Consecrated Veteran. He's a one generic and one white creature human warrior with the ability discard a card, tap Consecrated Veteran, it gains indestructible until end of turn, and he has a power of 3 and toughness of 1. And okay, I can see this card being useful like during turn 2, turn 3. But this he's basically got a discard, then tap the creature, and then it becomes indestructible. Maybe during the. This could be very useful, like in the beginning of the game, but I don't really specifically know. But yeah, I'm just letting you guys know. And there might be some rushing through cards. Okay. And the second second one, the last one for June 6th that I forgot, was the card Bungle Rebirth for 2 generic and 1 green instant. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If a creature died this turn, create 2 1/1 green Sapperling creature tokens. So yeah, Sapperling tokens would be very good for the historic set for Magic Arena, for getting more two green Sapperling tokens. So you get to return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So it could be any creature, enchantment, planeswalker, or land, or anything. Okay, with that one out of the way, we're moving on to what happened in June 7th. There was only 2 new cards that were unveiled, and we're going to go right through them. Next on our list is a blue card called Spike Megalon. He's a 5 generic mana and 2 blue creature shark with hexproof, so he can't be affected by sorcery or instant spells. And he has the ability of having, whenever Spiked Megalon attacks, you get to scry 1, you get to look at the top card of your deck, and you can choose to leave it on top or put it at the bottom. He has a toughness of 5 and a power of 5 and toughness of 7. And I can see this is basically draw value for every turn, knowing what the next card is on top is going to be every time you attack. So yeah, that's a very good card to have if you want to focus on blue and know which cards, if you want to draw a card, and that will be good, I suppose. Okay, the next card is Carrion Grub for 3 generic, 1 black creature insect with the ability Carrion Grub gets a plus X where for power, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in your graveyard. And also with the ability when Carrion Grub enters the battlefield, mill 4 cards. Put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. And that's yours. So you're basically trading 4 cards from the top of your deck to your graveyard. And Carrion Grub will only start off with power of 0 and toughness of 5. That's where the plus X fits into it. So that you can have a really good, powerful card in your graveyard power-wise, and it'll become that power added to Carrion Grub. So you can get like a very powerful 11/11 Eldrazi card in your graveyard. And yeah, that could be very dangerous having 11/11, but that 5 toughness if you have a good card that does 5 damage. So yeah, it doesn't carry the abilities. Okay, so we're now moving on to June 8th. That was yesterday. And we got a huge slew of cards, and including returning cards from previous series, from previous sets. So let's start off with another creature card called Pride Milkin for 2 generic and 1 green. Creature cat. When Pride Milkin enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it has trample. They can deal excess combat damage to the player or planeswalker they're attacking. And Milkin only has a power of 2 and a toughness of 1. So yeah, if you're working on a +1/+1 counter deck, I could see that being a very dangerous card. And they also get that trample improvement with it. And it's basically easily dealt with if you can deal with it quickly, like with instant sorcery, unless it gets hexproof. So I can see that be like top priority, and it'll automatically come with that automatic +1 on one of your creatures. Okay, the next card, it is a Pursued Whale for 5 generic and 2 blue. Creature Whale, and with the ability, when Pursued Whale enters the battlefield, each opponent creates a 1/1 red pirate creature token with this creature cannot block, and creature you control attack each combat if available. And also has another ability with spells your opponent casts target Pursued Whale cost plus 3 more generic mana more to cast. So if you want to destroy it, you would have to pay an additional 3 mana on the whale, and the whale's attack and power and toughness is equal to 8. So yeah, this can be very dangerous, but also it would have that red pirates that they would have to attack you directly, but you could also the opponent can just like use them as sacrifice fodder for their plans or something like that. So anyway, we're moving on to another card, and it's called Archdemon Thistle for 1 black mana creature human clerk with lifelink. And the ability is when Archdemon Thistle enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard or was cast from your graveyard, exile it. If you do, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. And the vessel only gets a power of toughness of 1. And yeah, this one could be very powerful if you can cast it from the graveyard. You get that 5/5 demon benefit, but that requires of resurrecting a creature from the graveyard, and there are some cards that do that. So yeah, I can see this card be used in like Commander formats or Brawl formats if you can bring back this creature, so you can get a 5/5 with flying. That's a good card to have. Okay, the next card is another reprint of a classic card that I thought would probably not come back, but it probably was inevitable. We have Cultivate, a classic for Commander format as well, and it is a 2 generic and 1 green sorcery spell that has the ability search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal those cards, put one onto the battlefield tapped, and the other one in your hand, and then shuffle your library. It's basically mana ramp, gives you mana ramp for green, that's what green does, gives you more mana, and you would basically get 2 lands on your next turn, basically. And it's a classic, it was eventually going to have a reprint. Okay, next we have another multicolored creature, Lore Scale Cortal. For 1 generic, 1 green, 1 blue, creature snake. And whenever you draw a card, like when you draw a card from the start of your turn, or whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on Lore Scale, and it starts out with a power of toughness of 2. So whenever you draw a card, or when you have a spell that allows you to draw a card, Lore Scale is gonna get beefed up quite a lot. If you have like a draw value system, it's going to be crazy with that one. Okay, the next card, it is called Angelic Ascension. For 1 generic and 1 white instant sorcery instant spell, exile target creature or planeswalker. Its controller creates a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying, so you can easily get rid of a creature or planeswalker, but it becomes a double-edged sword that the controller of that creature and planeswalker will get a 4/4 white angel creature token. I can see this being used on the opponent, to yourself getting that benefit, but to your opponent that would be basically giving them a bit of a win on your opponent's side. Okay, next it is another sorcery, Prevalent Haze, for 1 generic and 2 black sorcery, and it has the ability of choose 1. The first ability, all creatures get a -2/-2 until end of turn, or the second one, remove 2 loyalty counters from each planeswalker. So you could use it for the second ability to get rid of 2 loyalty counters on the planeswalker, making it easier to kill it, or if that particular planeswalker is at 2 loyalty, you could basically instant kill it with 3 mana. So, or you can basically kill. There are some cards for the old creatures get -2/-2 ability until end of turn. I could see that being used for maybe the planeswalker, mostly maybe, or mostly to deal with creatures on turn 3. Okay, the next card, it is called Village Rites for 1 black, and it is an instant spell, and it has the ability, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, and the ability has just draw 2 cards. So you have to sacrifice a creature, so you could use a fodder creature to be able to get 2 more cards into your hand. So that's just a basic card. And the next card, it's another reprint of another classic Commander format card. We have Solemn Simulacrum for 4 generic mana, artifact creature Golem. And it has the ability, when Solemn Simulacrum enters the battlefield, you may search your library for basic land, put that card into the battlefield tab, then shuffle your library. And it also has one more benefit, saying when Simulacrum dies, you may draw a card. It has the power of toughness of 2. It's a classic commander card, coming into the format, and it'll probably be good for Brawl if you're doing that way. And I know I'm going through this, trying to get caught up. So we have another card for the Bastry lot of cards, and it's a sorcery with, it is Bastry's Solidarity. It's a sorcery for 1 generic and 1 white, and the ability is basically put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Basically, everybody on your side gets a buff. Plus 1/1 buff. And we got another card for Bastry's lot, like with Teferi Master of Time set from the last video. And it is Bastry's Lieutenant for 3 generic and 1 white. Creature, human knight, and it has the ability of Vigilance, and this card has protection from multicolored cards. And when Bastry's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and whenever Bastry's Lieutenant or another creature you control dies, if it has a 1/1 counter on it, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with Vigilance. So it's another way of getting knights. And the Lieutenant has power of 3 and toughness of 4. I can see this being in a knight stack, but you would have to buff up your creatures with a 1/1 counter in order to get that benefit of creating more white knight tokens. Okay, so we have the Bastry set already done. We're moving on to the Chandra set. So we start off with Sandra's Priorling for 1 generic and 1 red creature, elemental lizard, and its ability is whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to opponent, Chandra's pet Priorling gets a +1 power and gains double strike until end of turn. It deals both first strike and regular combat damage, and its power is 1 and toughness is 3. I think this deck would be good for dealing non-combat damage and to an opponent, like hitting your opponent player. So if you go and attack your opponent or use like one of your instants or sorceries to deal damage to that player, and Priorling would get a increase in attack and gain a double strike for only a turn. So I can see this be very good for multiple cards. And we got our second Chandra. We get Sandras Mag Mutt for 1 generic and 1 red creature, elemental dog, and it has tap this card. Sandras Magma Mutt does 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, and it has the power of toughness of 2, so it kind of combos well with elemental lizard every turn. And I can see these two in like the rest of the Chandra set lot be pretty useful. And we're moving on to basically the planeswalker herself, Chandra Hot Afire for 3 generic and 2 red legendary planeswalker Chandra and she starts out with 5 loyalty. Her +1 ability is discard your hand, then exile the top top 3 cards from your library. Until the end of turn, you may play cards exiled this way, so you'd be trading your entire hand to +1 her ups to use those 3 cards only per turn. And that's kind of a bit of a risky play if your opponent manages to get rid of your planeswalker like after when this ability is cast, then you're kind of boned and you would have to try and be lucky on your draws, and you would have to try to rebuild your hand that way. So I can see this one not be as good. And we got another +1 who might get more, is Chandra Hot Afire, deals 2 damage to any target. So basically you get a free shock every turn, like zapping every creature once per turn. kill a 2/2, bam, it dies automatically. And I can see this one be played more. And her ultimate is -9, and you would have to use Chandra's ability like 4 times to do it, or 5 times if you want to keep Chandra around. It's called -9 for -9. Search your graveyard and library for any number of red instant and sorcery cards. Exile them, then shuffle your library. You may cast them this turn. Also add 6 red. So this could be a game killer if you know what kind of cards red. You get your full access to red instants and sorcery cards, but they'll still be exiled at the end of the turn. So yeah, you have to make sure you still got a lot of red mana. When I can see this be a late end game ultimate, so you have to be very careful with that. So on the last Chantra's of her entire Chandra set is Chandra's Incinerator. For 5 generic and 1 red creature elemental, and the ability is this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponent this turn. It has trample. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent's Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So, and it also has the power of toughness of 6. So basically, if you put a like a shock, blows up, it hits your opponent, Chandra Incinerator is just going to deal another bonus 2 damage to only a creature or a planeswalker. So yeah, that's gonna suck. But the downside is you would have to deal like a total of 5 non-combat damage to play it for 1 mana. So moving on, we got a non-basic land for this set. We have Radiant Fountain for a land, and when Radiant Fountain enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and you get tap this card for a generic mana. So yeah, this is basically just you can play this, you get 2 life. If you can bounce it back and forth for the land, you can get constant life. I can see this card be good for. It's just a good card. Just gives you 2 life. It's not really that important. Okay, the next card is Revitalize for 1 generic and 1 white instant, and the card has you gain 3 life and draw a card for an instant. So you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn, and you would automatically get 3 life, but draw a card. Nothing too special. Next card, we have Elder Gargaroth for 3 generic and 2 green creature beast, and its abilities have Vigilance, Reach, Trample. And its special ability is whenever Elder Gargaroth attacks or blocks, choose only one of these options. First, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Second, you gain 3 life. And third, draw a card. So I think most players are going to when using Elder Gargaroth, and also the card has the power and toughness of 6. So I can see this card be pretty good, and probably the player who has this card is probably going to go for the first option or maybe the third option. Maybe the first option first, and then like on tier wise, maybe the first ability and the third ability would be second, and then the gained life would be last. So yeah, this thing's going to be a beast, so you have to get rid of it, save your exile or destroyed cards to that particular card for something like that coming along. The next card is a sorcery, and it's called See the Truth for 1 generic and 1 blue sorcery spell, and it has the ability Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of those cards into your hand, and the rest at the bottom of your library, in any order. If this spell was cast from anywhere other than your hand, put each of those cards into your hand instead. So if you can do that little wiggle room of casting this particular See the Truth from like your graveyard or from exile and not to your hand, you get that extra benefit of basically drawing 3 cards. So yeah, I can see this being good if you can figure out a way to do that. Okay, the next card is another creature card, and it's called Leaping Augur. Leaping Augur. For 3 generic and 1 red, it's a creature, human shaman, with trample, and it has the ability of Leaping Augur's power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. And also with when Leaping Augur enters the battlefield, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. So you discard 2 cards, but you still get to draw 2 other cards. And it has an asterisk for power and a toughness of 4. So, and that asterisk is only as strong as long as you have the power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. So I can see this card being in an Izzet deck. So yeah, this is going to be pretty powerful, but if you can like lava coil it when it comes out, so it's not that dangerous if you don't have anything to destroy or instant or sorcery spells or etc. As long as it doesn't get hex proof, then you're okay. Okay, the next card is called Siege Striker for 2 generic and 1 white creature human soldier with double strike, and it has the ability whenever Siege Striker attacks, you may tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Siege Striker gets a +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature tapped this way. And its power and toughness starts as 1. So I can see this guy like come out like turn 3 if you, turn 4 if you can get it to turn 4, and if you have multiple creatures during those first 4 turns, yeah, this guy would be a high priority threat, but it just depends on the subject, and if you can get like a good power boost on certain cards that'll give it a power boost. And I can see this card being a little troublesome at the beginning of the game, but you would have to be lucky. Okay, the next card we have another creature, and it is Selfless Rescue Dog and it only costs 1 white mana. Creature, dog, and it has the ability sacrifice Selfless Rescue Dog. Another target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn, and it has the power toughness of 1. So yeah, it's basically it'll probably be good for that indestructible part. Make your creatures indestructible, and they'll be okay for a turn if you sacrifice the dog first. Not really an okay turn 1, but it'd probably be good for buffing like a very important like putting indestructible on a very important creature for your on the field. Next, we have another red card called Bolt Hound for 2 generic and 1 red. Creature, elemental dog, and it has haste. This creature can attack and tap as soon as it comes under your control, so you can attack it right away. And it has the ability whenever Bolt Hound attacks, other creatures you control get a +1 to attack power until end of turn. And Bolt Hound starts with a power of toughness of 2. So I can see. So if you got multiple creatures, you play this card and you attack with Bolt Hound and with your other creatures, all those other creatures attacking will get a instant power buff of 1. So yeah, I can see this being people's decks for that. Next card is an enchantment called Faith's Fetters for 3 generic and 1 white. Enchantment aura, enchant permanent, and it has the ability when Faith of Faiters enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. Enchanted permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated unless they are mana abilities. So I can see this card be very good at dealing like very annoying cards with very annoying abilities. And that card cannot activate its ability, so you're actually getting rid of a very annoying card if you deal with it super quickly. I can see this being in other people's decks. And the last for June 8th would be Tide Skimmer for 3 generic and 1 blue, and it is a creature drake, and it has flying. And its ability is whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures with flying, you get to draw a card, and it has the power of 2 and the toughness of 3. So basically you can draw a card if you attack with 3 or more creatures, including 3 or more, you get to draw a card as long as they have flying. So I can see this one be in people's decks, and that's it for June 8th. June 9th, there's only 2, 3, 4. So we'll get over those cards really quickly. So the first card for June 9th, that is today, it is called Grasp of Darkness for 2 black mana. It's an instant, and target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, so you can get rid of a power. You can get rid of a toughness creature of 4 or more, like right away as soon as turn 2. So yeah, I can see this be very good against creatures with toughness of 4. And the next card, we got a multicolored creature, and it is Observice, Observive Stitcher, for 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 black. Creature, human wizard, and it has the ability of tap this card, draw a card, then discard a card. And it has a mana ability of 2 generic, 1 blue, 1 black, tap the card, sacrifice Obsessive Stitcher, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has no power and toughness of 3, so I can see this card like be really good late game. If you want to bring like a very powerful card back to the battlefield, you just have to pay 4 mana. You 4 mana, tap, sacrifice the Stitcher, and you can get like a very powerful creature from your deck that's usually super high as soon as turn 4 if you have it in your graveyard, and you can trade Stitcher for a very powerful card as soon as turn 4 if you're lucky. The next card, we got another reprint from it's a land, and it's a reprint from Throne of Eldraine, a popular, very expensive card, Fabled Passage, and I use this card all the time. If you play the land, it has tap, sacrifice Fabled Passage, search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Then, if you control 4 or more lands, untap that card that you just played. So yeah, Fabled Passage is getting reprints. So I can see the value of this card. Like, the value for Fabled Passage was high, so it's practically a very popular card from Throne of Eldraine. So yeah, that was a very good card, and I would love to be able to get Fabled Passage because it's a good card to get when you get it on turn 4, and you would be able to get a free. You would get only a basic land, but it's not too bad. Next card, speaking of reprints, we get another reprint called Heroic Intervention for 1 generic and 1 green instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So basically, it'll stop whatever. If you wanted to get rid of a creature with exile, so instant or sorcery cards would be useless until end of turn, with Heroic Intervention out for a very important combo piece. And this card was in uh, Ether Revolt from a set from like 2-3 years ago. It was part of the Kaladesh block, so that's coming back. And for lands, we see the artwork for a mountain, and we only get, and for another reprint set of the Temple series that'll let you scry for when you play a land, and it's for the empathy, Milady, Mystery, Silence, and Triumph are coming back. So I can see probably the next set that would be besides we already have other two the other two temples from most of the other temples from Theros Beyond Death coming back. So sad reprint. I was expecting like another reprint of a very good card of lands coming back, but you may never know. So the next card, it's a very big spell, and it's called Volcanic Salvo for 10 generic and 2 red. It's a sorcery card, and it has this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. So if you have like a very powerful 10/10, it'll basically be cost. Volcanic Salvo will only cost 2 red to play it, and Volcanic Salvo deals 6 damage up to 2 creatures or planeswalkers of your choice. So you can get rid of 2 very nasty planeswalkers or 2 creatures for 6 damage, but it has a big price of if you have to pay it normally for 10, so you would need like a very big bulky creature being played to reduce it. So I can see this card. If you manage to get like a huge reduction on using it, but I can see this card being like late game, so. Okay, next card we have another artifact, and it is called Idol of Endurance for 2 generic and 1 white artifact. When Idol of Endurance enters the battlefield, exile all creature cards with converted mana cost of 3 or less from your graveyard until Idol of Endurance leaves the battlefield. And it has a mana ability for 1 generic and 1 white. Tap the card. Until the end of turn, you may cast a creature spell from among the cards exiled with Idol of Endurance without paying its mana cost. So you can easily cheap out a 3 or less converted mana cost from exile with this card without paying for it. So you can have a really nasty 3 mana converted cost card coming back. So yeah, I can see multiple combos with this one. And it only costs 3, 2 generic and 1 white, so I can see this card be played a lot. Okay, the next card, it is called Increase Vitality for 2 generic mana and 1 green instant, and it has the ability to put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, then double the number of 1/1 counters on that creature. So if you want to if you got like a very powerful Hydra on there and you play this spell and put a 1/1 counter on that card, and that Hydra is going to get freaking huge with like double the counter. So if you have like a 5/5 Hydra, most of them came from 1/1 card counters. Play this for 3, put another one, make it a 6/6, then instantly double it. It'll become a 12/12 Hydra, so it'll be a very big card for you to deal with. It'll be very useless if the opponent manages to destroy it or exile it. So I can see this card be used pretty often in this set. And the next card is another creature. It's a multicolored creature called Direfleet Warbringer. For 1 generic, 1 black, 1 red creature, orc, pirate, and it has the ability at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may sacrifice another creature you control. If you do, Direfleet Warbringer gets a plus 2/2 and trample until end of turn, and he starts out with a power of toughness of 3. So yeah, he could be very Direfleet Warbringer could be very dangerous. Like as soon as turn 4, if you have a creature to sacrifice, and it'll deal 5 damage. But if you can destroy it before that happens, but I can see players doing that to stop it. So the next card we have another instant, and it's called Soul Seer for 2 generic and 1 red instant, and it has the following: Soul Shear deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. That permanent loses indestructible until end of turn. So I can see, yeah, it's going to be freaking powerful for this set, and I can see it in standard tried to take on like the very annoying cards like the gods from Theros Beyond Death or creatures with indestructible. And yeah, that's a very good instant card. Maybe I should get that. And next we move on to a new legendary creature. We have Jorel. Jorel Marwulid Mar Marwun Marwunfui Recluse for 1 generic and 1 green legendary creature human druid, and it has the ability whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token. And it has a mana ability for 4 generic and 2 green. Until the end of turn, creatures you control have base power and toughness of XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. And Jorel only has power of 1 and toughness of 2. So yeah, this could be a good commander if you got multiple creatures, and you would have to easily ramp up, and it'd be, as long as you got like a very huge hand, that power and toughness, like all creatures will have only that big buff. So if you have like 7 cards in your hand, all your creatures will become 7/7s until the end of turn. So I can see that card be very good in Brawl. And lastly, the last card of today, it is called Stormwing's Presence for 3 generic and 2 blue. Creature Elemental, it has the ability, this spell costs 2 generic and 1 blue unless you cast less, costs 2 generic and 1 blue less if you cast. If you have cast an instant in Sorcery this turn, it has flying, it has also Prowess, and another ability, when Stormwing's Presence enters the battlefield, scry 2, so you can look at the top 2 cards, blah blah blah. And it has the power of toughness of 3. So I guess people would, and if you do it right, you can basically get a huge mana reduction and play this card as soon as turn 2 or turn 3. And I can see this card be in an Izzet deck, like Izzet is blue-red, so. And with that last card, yeah, that is all the cards for up to June 19th as far as I know for today. And yeah, it's going to be a very long video, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next day's video, or as soon as I'm available. So until then, have a good day everybody, and I'll see you on the very next episode. So until then, bye for now.